What were you up to in the year 2010? Perhaps you think I'm asking you a very redundant question, or you're actually wondering if there is some clever answer to this. It's actually not meant to be clever or tricky, because I am talking about the year when the youngest and predicted to become the largest generation were first born. The dazzling Generation Alpha. Born between 2010 and 2025, this tech-savvy cohort is the first generation to be fully belong to the 21st century and raised in a digital world, and they're here to show us all how it's done. Imagine a world where your best friends might be animated characters and your classroom is as likely to be a sleek tablet as it is a traditional desk. Yep, that's Generation Alpha for you. They're the children of millennials, and they are shaping to become the most diverse, educated, and connected generation yet. From mastering coding before they can ride a bike to understanding social issues like it's second nature, these kids are not just the future, they are the present. So buckle up as we explore the quirks, trends, and incredible potential of Generation Alpha, and see what they're teaching us about innovation, creativity, and connection. Let's jump in, folks. Hello, everyone. I am Goldie, your host for today. Today's episode will be divided into 3 parts. Number 1, what are their signature traits? 2, what matters to them? And 3, how are we predicting their moves in the workplace? Part 1. Generation Alpha is the most globally and racially diverse generation to date. Yep, you heard that right. With over 2.8 million being born each week, primarily in countries like India, China, and Indonesia. In the US alone, there are more than 51 Gen Alphas. Notably, this generation will mark the first time where less than half of its population identifies as white. Following the heels of increasingly diverse backgrounds, I'm fascinated. They are also the hyper-digital generation. For Gen Alpha, technology is not just a feature of life, it's a fundamental aspect of their existence. These digital natives have grown up with smartphones, obviously, social media, and immediate access to information, blurring the lines between online and offline connections. Advanced technologies like augmented reality, otherwise known as AR, virtual reality, VR, and of course, artificial intelligence, AI, are commonplace elements of their daily routines. Nearly half of Gen Alpha's own tablets, and research indicates that 43% of children aged 3 to 5 already have a tablet. As they grow, they become increasingly familiar with more complex technologies, such as video game consoles and smart TVs. In line with their second nature usage of technology and screens, this clearly makes them organic content consumers and creators. YouTube has emerged as the preferred platform for Gen Alpha. This is no secret, I'm sure, for most of you, with many young users considering it's the coolest brand. Lastly, they are also creative gamers. Similar to Gen Z, Gen Alpha also enjoy gaming, but they perceive it more as a creative outlet and social space rather than just an escape. So platforms such as Roblox, Minecraft allow them to construct their worlds and connect with friends, attracting huge brands like Walmart and Nike to engage with them in those environments. As I was learning about them, I have to admit, I was beginning to worry if they are the generation that will fully disengage from human contact. But there is a silver lining, and it has happened post-COVID. They have been coined as the generation that also wants to get unplugged. I love that. They want to strike the balance between their innate nature of being digital to non-digital. Many members of this generation are capable of stepping away from the relentless online engagement and social media, instead opting for genuine interactions in the real world. So a 2023 global survey conducted by GWI, a market research firm, revealed that 43% of Gen Alpha kids actually spend time with friends on weekends, compared to just 39% who prefer communicating online. Similarly, another survey by marketing agency Razorfish indicated that nearly three quarters of US based Gen Alpha are increasingly aware of their mental health, and they prefer to disconnect from technology and spend time outdoors. This is because they were scarred by the pandemic and having seen for themselves the downsides of social media from the experiences of their elders. Gen Alpha may yet turn out to be, in my opinion, the most astute generation of consumers. They are likely to approach content and platforms with greater skepticism and awareness than Gen Z or millennials ever did. Lakshan, you have been making a lot of expressions, and I'm actually curious to know what you are thinking.
So, again, quite a few thoughts. One set of thoughts are from my own personal observations, and the other set are from whatever I'm learning as I'm hearing you speak. Right? What you mentioned about it's the first time when less than half the population is will be identifying themselves as white. That's an interesting tidbit for me. Right? What you mentioned also about um, 40 something percent of Gen Alpha kids, 43%, I believe, right? They spend time with their friends on weekends rather than online as much. And also about how the pandemic is what shifted things for them. So, very recently, I was spending some time with my cousins because end of the year we wanted to all get together and do like a family trip of sorts. So I am the eldest of all the cousins from my mom's side, and the youngest one is 9 years old currently. So there is
Mm.
a near 2 decade, age difference, right? And his elder brother is just turned 13, about couple of days back, 3 4 days back, right? Now what I noticed about them, they are like Gen Alpha as it gets, and these kids are so smart, so smart. We were playing all these games and all that stuff, and so there's this game called Heads Up. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Mm.
For those who of you who aren't, it's basically this game you play on the mobile where essentially you have to guess a word. Okay,
Yeah.
you are playing it, you are holding your phone up on top of your head, and on the screen there's a particular word, and other people are giving you clues to guess that word. So it's almost as if these kids have their own language, their own way of helping each other with the clues. And it's like things that just don't seem to occur to the rest of the family, the oldies, so to say, the Gen Xers, and yeah, mostly Gen Xers only. Those guys weren't, they had no clue what the hell was going on, because these kids just had seemed to have their own language, and things were just clicking for them. It was amazing to witness, to watch. Very smart. Their ability to use the mobile is again second to none. We spoke about that, how
Mm.
most of these kids get it by age 9. They have one for themselves. I don't think my my aunt's kids have one for themselves yet, but definitely they are very very adept at using them. What you mentioned about tablets, yeah, they've grown up with the tablet. So everything you mentioned, I'm just connecting it to what I very 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 recently saw. And another thing that I notice is, as smart as they are, they're also very, again, it goes in line with what you mentioned, Goldie. They're also very much socially astute. That social literacy, let's call it,
Yeah.
intelligence, if you want to call it, that they have that at a higher degree than the typical Gen Z. We complain about Gen Z for not being, very socially intelligent, let's say, or very social skills are a bit on the lacking side, is something that we there is a misconception to an extent, but there's also some element of truth with these kids. I don't notice it at all. And it also reminded me of a previous episode where you mentioned that uh, parents who are taking their kids to these classes in order to help them develop these skills at a young age, and I had the same worry that you had about, are they going to be even more disengaged from people, and even more say completely submerged in technology. But what you mentioned about the pandemic being the the thing, the great reset, uh, I'm able to see it, and I also have a very 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 different level of hope and optimism for this generation. I know I spoke a lot, but a lot of thoughts, and I thought let me condense it as much as possible and just give it to
Yeah.
you.
I mean, I think you've summed it up really well. And for me, what's coming up actually, as we compare, say, Gen Z and Alpha, as much as we love our Gen Zs, right? We've always advocated them fully on our podcast, and they too are. In for the lack of a better word, digital natives, right? They've integrated it into their life so much so that they've generated AI. That's the generation of AI, aren't they? Otherwise known as. However, I think I want to make a little a sidebar here and say that Alpha is a bettered version of Gen Z because they have really become digital natives 2.0. So they know how to manage the digital and technology side of life and not let it manage them. That's what I'm observing as and how I've explored, this cohort. And this brings us neatly into part two, which is, so okay, they are these digital natives and they were born with tablets in their hands and probably looking at the camera from the minute they were born. So what matters to them? I think it's interesting to look into that now. That's part two. We've covered who they are and observed that their place in the world, is marked by in a large way by being put in a digital spotlight from day one of their existence. So this means that privacy is not a word they see as a threat. I want to substitute that with being seen as authentically. So if we were to say, are they private? No, not at all, because their face is on the camera from day one. So instead of protecting their privacy, they'd rather just be seen more authentically. They really have nothing to hide. But if they want to value their intimacy, they are ready to challenge technology. So you can't take Alpha for a ride. The algorithms will no longer govern their choices. Rather, Alpha will be the marketeers of content. This is how I'm envisioning, their future. So what really matters to them in that case are personalized values, technology driven education that, fosters creativity, independence, allowing them to explore their imaginative sides and acquire knowledge independently, as opposed to through a platform, a channel. They have the capabilities to acquire knowledge completely by themselves, so much so as create the platform for it. Okay. They're also highly aware of issues about the environment because many of them have expressed a desire to contribute positively to the planet, showing greater eco-consciousness than previous generations, including Gen Z. Diversity, inclusion, authenticity, these are all central to their identity as they grow up in a hyper-connected world that, exposes them to various cultures and perspectives. You can't escape it if you're an alpha. And with a very strong appreciation for this word, authenticity, 92% of alphas understand its importance and are actually committed to standing up for others and embracing self-expression. And the word that came to me here was empathy, automatically, standing up for others, but also expressing self-expression. Now, unlike Gen Z's anti-consumerism attitude, Gen Alpha exhibits brand loyalty, reminiscent of millennials, if we remember and go back to their habits. They significantly influence their parents' purchasing decisions from a young age, with many actively requesting products they encounter in stores and online. Why? Because they spend so much time on YouTube looking at content creators themselves. So brands are responding actually to this by targeting Gen Alpha as authentic marketing strategies and community engagement, evident with initiatives like Claire's, a platform for young creators, and Crayola, who have a successful content tailored to this generation on platforms like TikTok and Pinterest, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So I see Alpha being in control of what they want. A lot of their values are clearly influenced by the times they were born in, most significantly marked by the health pandemic, which we never saw, a digital revolution, a global migration crisis, climate strikes, just to name a few. So, Lakshan, what do you think we're learning from Gen Alpha and their values?
I think authenticity is the main thing. what you mentioned about 92%, right? Uh, the empathy aspect, the self expression aspect, the authenticity aspect, standing up for other people. One of the things I wanted to mention when I was talking about my cousins that I slipped my mind, but it's the perfect opportunity for me to do it now, is that they show up as they are, raw, and they own it. So there is no trying to uh, be too polished. I mean, not that they can't, not that it's not something they would like to do, or it's not a matter of can or can't do. It's a matter of when they choose to, they can, they will, but they don't feel the need to when they don't feel the need to. They're very open and very accepting of who they are, and they come across that way, own it completely. And it's almost as if that privacy aspect you mentioned, it's almost as if Gen Alpha are like, look, this privacy thing is not really a thing in a technology age. So let's just be ourselves. If people are going to find out how we actually are, let's just do it from the get go, right? So that's something that just came up for me randomly. That's one of the values, I would say. And while you spoke about the social and eco aspect of the issues that they advocate for, I think one more thing I see I expect to see more of, and I expect the voices to be a lot louder, is when it comes to ethics and digital practices and morality and things of that nature when it comes to AI and technology moving forward. I think they are going to be big advocates for that, and they're going to take it into their own hands to make it happen in a way. I think we spoke about it briefly when we spoke about the AI episode, but Gen Z and Gen AI. But over there, we spoke about how Gen Z are starting to see and be a little more skeptical, and they're actively working towards it. I think Gen Alpha are going to grab it by the horns and run with it. It's this. This is the feeling that I'm getting. Also, what you mentioned about how essentially they're going to be the ones that dictate social media and algorithms. I'm with you on that, because recently I heard some creators saying that don't think of algorithms as algorithms, think of algorithms as audience. If it's not that the algorithm does not like your content and it's not pushing it, it's that the audience does not like the content and they don't want it to be pushed. So the algorithms are already moving in that direction slowly, and I feel like it's not going to be technology and algorithms per se that are going to be dictating what kind of content we watch. I think it's going to be the audiences first, and I think Gen Alpha are going to be front and center when it comes to that. So these are just a couple of things that I've noticed and I expect to see happen. I think these are things we can learn from them.
Absolutely. And as you were just mentioning this idea of algorithms should be audience and not, governing the audience, I just remembered what we shared before we recorded today, which was even ChatGPT is now giving you the option to tailor make your profile, and according to how you feed it information about yourself, it's going to, I guess, deliver based on your personality or how you speak. And there's a lot of, let's say, tweaking going on in the world of artificial intelligence, which is actually exactly what Alpha are going to be doing, isn't it? They're going to be so authentic about the way they move in the world, but with the help of technology and AI and VR and AR and all these other ways of expression, it's going to enable them to show up and eliminate what we otherwise get worried, like deep fakes, for example. I think that's a very much a Gen Z worry that is maybe just coming into the past now. We're leaving it in the past, I think. I'd like to hope so. That's my sort of little bit of addition at the end there. And I think it brings us very neatly again into part 3, which is, so these guys are now, 2010, 2025. So we're seeing them now, or, hitting prime adolescent age, the eldest Alpha, 15 years approximately. And so we have to start thinking about them in the workplace sometime soon. I mean, in the next 10 years, they will be very much a reality of the workplace. So in this final part of the episode, I want to take a look at, the future and how the workplace looks like for Alpha, or at least how we envision it for them. By 2030, Gen Alpha is expected to comprise 11% of the adult workforce. So, with an estimated 65% of them entering jobs that don't even exist yet. So, we are thinking of these individuals who are going to be in jobs that we don't even know what they're going to be doing, but we know they'll be there. Now, unlike Gen Z, Gen Alphas will find themselves in a job market increasingly influenced by AI and automation, no surprises there, making adaptive skills and lifelong learning crucial for their success. So this whole idea of going back to school and eternal, learning processes is going to be embedded in them. It's not like you do a course, you do a job, and then you go back and do a master's. I don't think it's going to look like that for them. It's going to be every time I go to work, I'm learning and I'm on the go. That's what I'm seeing. This generation is obviously well prepared to embrace these emerging skills and technologies, with 59% believing that AI, virtual reality, and smart assistants will play significant roles in their future careers. So their use of time, this is how I'm translating this, will be extremely streamlined thanks to AI and, say, automated assistants. They will view that technology as an essential means of emerging and engaging in the world, and they're likely to approach their work with a global perspective. Okay? Having observed their parents transition to more flexible work arrangements during COVID-19, Gen Alpha will see remote and hybrid not as a luxury, but as a standard expectation, another prediction for them. Moreover, this generation shows great potential as innovative and entrepreneurial leaders, excelling in research, problem solving, and online collaboration, whilst maintaining a very strong desire to make positive impact because of their organic attunement to social issues. Overall, Gen Alpha is poised and is ready to make significant impact on our cultural, technological, and environmental landscapes. Their deep understanding of technology will be their biggest forte, combined with commitment to social responsibility, and this may lead them towards a future that earlier generations could hardly have envisioned. I want to say that the simple fact that we are even addressing their future on this podcast is already, for me, a positive sign for leaders to become attuned to what is coming. I don't think these conversations were common for the more senior cohorts, definitely not when Gen X was entering the workplace. So Lakshan, you know that when Gen Alpha will be in the workplace, your generation will most definitely be leading them, potentially as the most senior cohort. Does that make you feel old? How are you Yeah. So I want to ask you, how are you picturing the future alongside them?
I want to, continue to pull the thread of what you mentioned about, the fact that we've been talking about the future, even though they've not even hit the workforce yet, and there's still a few years to go. It's like, it's like preparing yourself for when the time does come, right? It's for leaders who want to take the initiative now itself. And I think one of the things that I was reading about recently is that Gen Alpha are called mini millennials because they share similar values. So it's like I look at it as two. I look at them as mirror generations almost in a certain sense, because they're both transitioning into growing up in a world where they're transitioning from one thing to another. So over here we have millennials who are transitioning from digital technology into social media, right? And now we have Gen Alpha who are transitioning into from the social media space to the AI space. So I look at them as mirror generations in that regard, right? How millennials, they understood the value of disengaging before they got caught up or trapped almost within social media. I see that happening also with Gen Alpha based on whatever we spoke about so far.
Yeah.
That they're actively disengaging because of what they've seen, like from the older cohorts, and also COVID played a huge factor in that. No, so I look at them as mirror generations almost, and maybe that's one of the reasons they're called mini millennials. I don't know, but I like to think of it that way. And I think there's going to be a lot of alignment with these generations also, because another pattern we spoke about early on in one of the episodes is how it's almost as if every alternate generation seems to have a stronger bond than every adjacent generation. So I feel like that's also another thing. I also feel like because millennials a lot more open than previous generations were, it'll benefit Gen Alpha a lot more. And I also feel like it's like prime time for millennials also to be able to adopt to all these AI technologies and automations and all that stuff. So they will be able to guide them by speaking their language, is what I feel.
Yeah.
And I feel like the one thing that will contribute most to the way that both these generations collaborate or synergize is coaching. I feel like that is how it's going to make a difference. I don't think active mentoring in the sense of telling is going to help as much, because again, these guys already have the tools, or they will have the tools to get information, no external information. Coaching is going to help them a lot more, is what I believe, because it helps you, enables you to find your own answers. Answers are
Yeah.
there, find your own answers, and more than find your own answers, it helps you tap into the resources that you already have to find your answers. So I feel like coaching is going to help, and also a lot of the skills that come along with coaching, being able to hold space and really listen, and what is presence, if you want to call. I don't want to go into the coaching aspect of it, but I feel like a lot of that will play a very big role, is what I feel. So I mean, if you're a millennial listening to us and you want to be a next generation leader, I think going into coaching or developing those skills for yourself will serve you very much in the long term. This is just my prediction. That's how whether I'm picturing it this way or not, I don't know, but this is how I want to picture it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful summary that you've given, and I loved the added layer of coaching, because I think if you remember, we did speak about how Gen Xers are the current most coachable generation, and it's interesting because we are resonating with Gen Z currently the most, so it's overlapping again, and I really resonate with this whole mirroring effect that you're talking about, because it's really just like that. And when you said they're mini millennials, that the first thing that I came up with was mini me, because you will essentially be at some point a father to an alpha, you know so, or in your case maybe a beta, which is what I'm going to come to now in our conclusions. So it was important, obviously, for us to highlight the youngest generation for the time of today on our podcast, but it won't be the last. Let me tell you, I'm sure of this. Generation Alpha is set to redefine our world as they enter adulthood very soon, bringing their unique values and experiences shaped by a rapidly changing environment. And, I leave you with one last update. As of this year, Alpha will no longer be the youngest generation. In the wake of 2025, it is now time to say hello to our newest cohort, Gen Beta. Beta has arrived. Although we just know them as tiny babies that are currently entering the world, but they too will be closely observed through the decade that will follow. And, if you have enjoyed what you heard today, I recognize that we've spoken a lot about what will happen, but there's been a very positive energy, I think, Lakshan, in today's episode, because we are so promisingly positive about Alpha. And we would like to, ask you to remain in the loop because we have so many exciting updates coming all the time. We are learning on the go as well about alpha and beta. Remember to subscribe to our podcast and please do share this episode with all your communities. And with that, we've come to the end of episode 18 of Mind the Gen Gap podcast. I've been your host, Goldie.
And I've been your co-host, Lakshan. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and tuning in all the way to the very end.
Muchísimas gracias.
See you in the next one.
Hasta pronto.
Bye.